Welcome to the peptide party. I promise it's going to be a good time. Very exciting topic that we have for you today. We're going to talk about the real story behind APIs, quality, access. We know this is a very highly regulated area, rapidly changing area. And so Matthew and myself are excited to bring this topic to you tonight. What we're going to cover. So I'll go over the agenda. Matt has a lot of great content here for you, and I'm just going to kind of moderate because I know we get these questions all the time from our pharmacies and from myself. So we'll talk about what is the current peptide landscape that we're seeing, active pharmaceutical ingredient quality, sourcing, because there's a lot of questions that come up around that, COAs and wholesaler vetting, what all that kind of looks like and how that's changing in the industry and how you can protect your pharmacy and your patients. And then peptides. All of our patients and all of our prescribers are asking us about peptides, what's coming, what's going on in perhaps the gray market. So we'll get into that too. And then how pharmacies can engage responsibly. So that's essentially what we're going to go over today. It's a lot of content, and we're really excited to have Matt here as an expert. But I'll just go ahead and jump in and introduce myself for those of you who don't know me, and then we'll jump into the content. So my name is Nicolette Mathey. I'm a pharmacist. I'm the founder and CEO of Atrium24 and the Dottie CRM software. So we work with hundreds of pharmacies across the country. We work with them on their sales and marketing through technology and through our niche GPO, where we connect our pharmacies with products. And so all of this is very topical, just in, how are our pharmacies sourcing? How are we answering our patients and our prescribers? And so I'm really excited to bring our guest speaker tonight, Matthew Johnson, to this webinar, and really appreciate the time and attention that he's brought to this topic and the advocacy that he actively participates in. So Matt, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Nicolette. And, first of all, I want to thank you and Atrium for giving us a stage this evening, giving us an opportunity to hopefully provide some information that is new to your audience and kind of quell some of the maybe concerns or interests or confusion that there is out there in the industry. For those of you who don't know, my name is Matt Johnson. I'm the president, CEO, founder of PharmaSource Direct. I have been in the compounding industry for about 25 years now, mostly focused on the wholesale side. So experience on that wholesale side transcends the procurement, management, sales, operational oversight, etc. So I feel that I have a pretty good grasp of the constantly evolving market that we live in. And peptides is one of those newest therapies that we are all trying to learn about at a rapid pace. So with that, I'd like to get started. So presently, interest in peptides has expanded rapidly across wellness, sports medicine, telehealth, integrative care settings. The trajectory has really been exponential over the last few years. However, the growth has really outpaced the regulatory clarity and supply chain maturity. FDA has raised concerns about inconsistent quality, inappropriate research use, products entering for human use, and the pharmacies are misunderstanding what qualifies as a lawful API. This has resulted in warning letters, enforcement actions, and heightened scrutiny across the compounding ecosystem. So whether sourcing for your pharmacy or sourcing for yourself, unfortunately, social media and non-industry professional podcasts don't always help to provide clarity. Unfortunately, they normally lead to some further confusion associated with this topic. Now, the peptide market is evolving from a regulatory perspective. As treatments seem to advance from oral nutraceutical grade materials to injectable grade materials, the FDA and state boards are increasingly distinguishing pharma-grade GMP-sourced APIs from non-compliant research chemicals. Documentation expectations now have extended beyond having just a certificate of analysis to verifying traceability, manufacturing standards, and regulatory eligibility for compounding. They must meet CGMP requirements according to 21-210-211. That's the part of the Code of Federal Regulations. Or in my industry, we also follow ICHQ7. It's a bit of a I wouldn't say a dumbed down version of the regulations, but a very similar version to 210 and 211, but more specific to raw material handling. Now, the other oversight that was governing the nutraceuticals was 21 CFR 211. That represents the dietary supplements. But as peptides become more and more popular, the method of administration has changed to include the sterile injectable versions that I mentioned before. Furthermore, doctors are writing prescriptions for these ingredients in that manner as well. And so that's where the pharmacies kind of get caught up in the middle. It's well known that the FDA and boards of pharmacies are cracking down on illegal use and distribution of unapproved peptides. This is especially evidenced by the FDA's placement of several peptides to Category 2 of the bulks list in September of 2023. If and when these substances are moved to List 1 and permitted for compounding, FDA will be keeping an eye on where it's coming from. So no matter what, they're going to be following the traceability aspect of this. All of this is going to lead to greater accountability and ultimately better quality and wider availability. Suppliers are going to be required to source materials from FDA registered and inspected sources. Suppliers that are unable or unwilling to meet these standards are going to be excluded from the legitimate pharmacy channels. Now, R&D or research use only peptides are not legal for compounding, regardless of purity claims. Pharma-grade APIs must be manufactured. Pharma-grade APIs must be manufactured in FDA-registered facilities, meet USP or equivalent standards, and be supported by a complete and verifiable certificate of analysis. Using the non-pharma-grade material exposes pharmacies to misbranding, adulteration, and it introduces a lot of patient safety risks. Intended use matters as it applies to the unapproved peptides. Since there is very little data on any of these approved substances, compounders must heed FDA's guidance regarding intended uses. This was published in 2021. You also have to refrain from making claims as to the target population's diseases or conditions it treats. This is ultimately going to be up to the physicians to determine when they're writing the prescription for the patients. Now, there's quality standards that differ dramatically. Based on overwhelming popularity of peptides, March of 2023, USP released a statement called the USP Peptide Standards, and that discusses the intent to provide more new monographs and general chapters to help ensure the safety of these therapeutic molecules. Because as most of us know, the majority of these molecules don't have USP monographs or approved human uses. Some of them do, but the majority of them do not. Subsequently, USP went on to draft and publish Chapter 1504, Quality Attributes of the Starting Materials for Chemical Synthesis of Therapeutic Peptides. That was published in December of 2023. This chapter discusses the importance of qualifying new raw material suppliers, understanding the impurity origins, because the impurity origins are a big sticking point for any of these peptides, because since there are branched chain amino acids, there's so many of these amino acids that link together to develop these new molecules. Each one of those have different impurity characteristics, and this is helping to define how to define or how to test for what those are. It also helps to measure and prevent certain impurities that can also be harmful. It controls critical impurities that result from the amino acid derivatives. So C of A's are critical to determine the quality of a drug substance. If the molecule has a USP monograph, it makes things easy as it defines any and all specifications and ranges that should be present. However, non-compendial molecules are a little bit trickier. Some standards, however, exist, and basic information that should be on all certificates of analysis are basically the original manufacturer, the batch and lot numbers, expiration or retest dates, and the lab performing the test if it's not the original manufacturer. There should always be a quality review and release signature on those as well. We've seen a lot where quality does not have any oversight on those, and that's a major red flag. It's important that you do not, it's important that you not only verify basic information, but also non-compendial minimums as it applies to all substances, compendial and non-compendial. So a valid C of A must always identify the acceptance criteria and the actual results, not just a pass or fail statement. The test specification should also include the following. So at minimum, you'd like to see identity testing, an assay, which is typically an IDA, an IDB, along with a water test. There's purity and related substances, which should include any potential byproducts, residual solvents, according to USP Chapter 467, elemental impurities, according to the USP Chapters 232 and 233. And I think the heavy metals and other, or think of the heavy metals and other toxic substances to human, like arsenic, cadmium, mercury, lead. Those are some of the substances that are going to be tested in that chapter. There are a couple of optional specifications that I also like to see, like appearance that describes the color or granularity or consistency of the material that you're expecting. So when you're expecting a white salt-like powder and you receive an orange flour-like powder, you can almost immediately determine without testing that something's not adding up there. Also, endotoxin and bioburden testing, those for sterile use products, those are essential. So those are some of the minimums that you should see on non-compendial peptide substances. Now, here's a few red flags that if you're seeing these on C of A's, you might want to question the source. I've literally seen some of these. Now, you should look out for things that include obvious photoshopped elements that differ from the rest of the C of A. We've had circumstances before where we will question a certificate of analysis with a supplier that we're vetting, and they send us back the same certificate analysis with the information we requested with the same quality signature and date on there. It's obvious that this hasn't gone through change management, that quality had nothing to do with this. This is just a salesperson that's trying to sell their product and meet the needs of the person requesting the material. That's a huge red flag. There's also missing specifications related to the non-compendial or compendial minimums or any other items listed in the basic information section that I just discussed. Vague test descriptions result. So another one is vague test descriptions. There, you might have, I'm trying to think of a great example. I can't come up with one at the moment, but you really want to have specificity. And then, of course, I mean, anybody knows this, but results that are outside the specifications, keep an eye out for those. We've seen those as well. We've been given certificates of analysis where the results exceeded what the specifications were, and they tried to pass it off as a compliance certificate of analysis. Now, the other one, as I mentioned before, if it's missing quality signatures or the quality signature dates precede the batch release, that's a huge red flag. Now, pharmacies are also expected to qualify suppliers and periodically verify certificates of analysis for accuracy. But the most tried and true method is to test your material against the certificate of analysis that's been provided to you. Now, of course, you can't go out and do a full monograph test on every single item you get, but identification testing, water testing, those are some great minimum testing that you can perform at your pharmacy level. Now, if the FDA is listening, they'd like to hear this. You should do it all in triplicate. Honestly, you really want to do things in triplicate so that you can verify the first one was not false. So it's the first one, the second one, the third one really validates the material. It might sound expensive. It is. That's why you rely on the suppliers like us to appropriately vet the manufacturer that you're going to be working with, because we do all that testing for you. We verify these suppliers for you. Then if you audit and qualify your supplier, you can normally get away with just qualifying your material with an ID test like that. So if we've gone out and we've done those tests and you've verified, validated us, qualified us, then you can rely on a lot of the testing that we've put into place as well. Now, I could spend a significant amount of time on how to appropriately vet an API wholesaler. With the GLP and peptide craze taking over the country, we have seen a number of firms sprout up seemingly overnight. They're offering quality APIs at very low prices. However, they're just interested in, they're not interested in your patient safety. I think they're more just interested in your money. Vetting the API wholesaler, it requires confirming FDA registration as a drug facility and GMP alignment. You want to make sure that they have all of the elements of the current good manufacturing practices that are defined by ICHQ7 and the CFRs. A lot of that you can do by asking for a table of contents of their certificate of analysis if some folks are kind of iffy about sending you the specific procedures themselves. Now, pharmacies should expect consistent lot-to-lot quality, rapid documentation access, and proactive disclosure of their regulatory status. The FDA has explicitly warned that poor supplier oversight can directly result in patient harm. You guys don't want to become front page news. Now, first, if they refuse to provide you with any quality related information related to your drug substance, that's a big red flag. Requesting of documentation goes beyond just a C of A or the safety data sheet. You can't afford the time. If you can't afford the time or the money to visit your wholesaler, then develop an audit questionnaire inquiring about certain products or the site that you're going to be working with. Second, make sure that you're using a wholesaler that always provide the manufacturer's name and address on the C of A. That allows you to verify that the manufacturer they're working with is actually registered with the FDA. You can also check the FDA's website to make sure that they have an NDC number registered for that drug product that you're purchasing. Because just because the manufacturer is registered, if they don't have a registered drug code, then they're somehow importing that into the United States in an illegal manner or a way that is circumventing the regulations. Next, and similar to the transparency, make sure that you ask if they're willing to provide you with the following. Their licensing, so the State Board of Pharmacy that they exist in, they need to have a state board for where they exist, also where they're selling to. And you need to make sure that they're registered with the FDA as a drug source. They must be registered with the DEA as a drug establishment site. So there's different interpretations of how to register with the FDA. This is the one that you need to check. And I have links to all of these. Feel free to contact me afterwards and I can provide them to you. Now, this allows you to verify the addresses for them too. Their registration and their NDC numbers. Again, this is another element that I can give you the links to these that you guys can verify on your own, but you should see what I've just shown you. It shows PharmaSource Direct's registration with the FDA. It also shows NDC numbers that we have registered with the FDA. If you're working with a supplier that doesn't have these elements, you might want to consider your source. Now, can you verify their address? In a lot of cases, and I've seen this as well, manufacturers provide us an address. We'll trace that address before we've had an opportunity to finalize the questionnaires or before we've had a chance to go out there and verify their facility. And it's an address to a hotel in the middle of China. This literally happens. It's happened multiple times. So if you can't get out there, make sure you have a liaison in the country of origin that can go physically inspect the site, take some pictures of the site, verify that it is not a hotel room somewhere in the middle of India, China, Europe. It happens more often than you'd think. Now, the questionnaires that you provide should have some basic questions about CGMP policies and procedures, like the table of contents that I mentioned earlier, questions about how they qualify their manufacturer. And it includes auditing and raw material testing and validation. Now, finally, consistency. You really want them to be consistent in everything that they do and every way that they act. If for some reason you're contacting them on a regular basis and it seems like there's just no consistency, maybe they don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're figuring it out along the way. You don't want to be their guinea pig. Make sure that you go to a site that knows exactly what they're doing. And a lot of the methods that we just discussed are ways that you can find that out before it's too late. So next, we're going to talk about BPC 157 and other peptides that are on the horizon. So there's a lot of interest in BPC 157. What is it? Now, disclaimer. The statements that I make right now, I'm not making any claims. BPC 157, the item itself being discussed, is not approved by the FDA for anything specific, and its safety and efficacy for anything discussed below has not been established. BPC 157, also known as Body Protection Compound 157, is a synthetic 15 amino acid peptide derived from human gastric proteins, and it's allegedly recognized for its potential to accelerate healing of the skin, tendons, ligaments, nerves, and bones. I've heard it called the miracle drug, the Wolverine drug. It basically is known to repair things that are broken throughout your body. Now, BPC is discussed in a variety of influential people like Joe Rogan, Andrew Huberman, and most notably, the Secretary of Human and Health Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. All of these individuals have spoken highly and even endorsed this product. However, BPC is not FDA approved. It's listed as a Category 2. It's ineligible for compounding at the moment under 503A and 503B. Now, despite its popularity, FDA has stated safety concerns and prohibited it from compounding. Pharmacies must separate scientific interest from the regulatory reality, avoid premature adoption of peptides that are lacking the legal pathways. Now, although due diligence is required by anyone choosing to take unapproved drugs, it may just be a matter of time before RFK and the MAHA movement successfully move BPC and the other peptide molecules onto Category 1. What is this Category 1 list, you might ask? I'm sure most of you know of it. We all operate with these categories. We discussed earlier Category 2. That's the list of banned or prohibited substances. But Category 1, on the other hand, is a list of APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, that have been approved for human use without meeting the first two requirements of the substances eligible for compounding. Those first two elements are the approved human use or the USP monograph. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. So eligible drug substances for compounds. Again, as I just mentioned, what is required in order to compound a drug substance or peptide in a 503A compounding pharmacy? First of all, it must have the USP monograph. It must be approved for human use, and you can find that out in the Orange Book if you're unsure. And it must appear on Category 1 of the FDA's bulks list. If it does not meet the criteria of these first three items that I've talked about, it should not be compounded. Now, what about for 503B outsourcing facilities? What's required in order for a 503B outsourcing facility to produce a particular drug product? Now, these are even a little bit more limited in what they're allowed to do. They must appear on the 503B Category 1 bulks list or drugs that are currently listed in shortage on the FDA shortage list. There's a few other leniencies, and I know those operating in the 503B space operate in those areas, but these are the two solid elements that you need to be able to compound in the 503B space. The issue is that based on patient demand and the prescriptions that are written by the physicians that are being provided to compounding pharmacies, the pharmacies are put in a really hard spot to deny these prescriptions for unapproved drugs. Furthermore, there's several vitamin, dietary supplement, and nutritional supplement companies selling the oral grade versions of all of these substances anyway. So then it's presumed, well, they must be okay to compound, they must be okay to take because they're already out there in that nutritional or dietary supplement form. What I've understood from my discussions with regulatory agencies is that right now, the FDA is just simply too overwhelmed to keep up with all of these folks, and thus they operate indefinitely under these illegal forms of drug substances. So you accept these prescriptions, you're like, well, I'm not getting caught, so why not keep doing it? It's a matter of time, and that day that the FDA shows up at your pharmacy, you can expect that it's not going to be a great visit. Now, those who monitor the FDA warning letters, they release every Wednesday. You should be one of them. If you don't now, I certainly suggest that you start. You can sign up for a notification from the FDA, and you'll receive the notification each Wednesday when the new warning letters are published. You're going to notice an ever-increasing number of warning letters being issued to firms for compounding and what is referred to as unapproved drug substances, or they might be considered adulterated. So you're going to see a lot more of these. I recommend you read them, model your business against what the FDA is looking for. They're really clues for, hey, when FDA is coming into 503As, when FDA is coming into 503Bs, what are they looking for? I review these all the time from the wholesale perspective. What are they looking for? What might we be missing? We feel that we're incredibly compliant, but sometimes you get an agent who's inspecting a facility. They have a different background, a different level of experience, and they're going to look for different things. So this is kind of a cheat sheet of what you need to do to help protect your pharmacy or your facility. Now, if you choose to accept these prescriptions, you also accept the risk associated with the accepting of these prescriptions. All of that said, there's an extensive list of peptides that currently meet the requirements and can be compounded. At this point in time, I'm going to turn this over to Nicolette so that she can talk about the different models that exist.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Matt. And it's really fascinating because it is very, I mean, we saw that, the DOJ and HHS and all these, the FDA, they're starting to come out, they're starting to make statements, they're starting to say that enforcement is coming. So you have that, and you have all these things happening with Trump RX and with, hims and hers. And these things are happening in the news, and our patients are seeing it, our prescribers are seeing it, of course, our pharmacies are seeing it. But then you also have a lot of anticipation in the industry that BPC 157 is going to be moved and going to be able to be compounded through these very strict and structured regulatory channels. So it's definitely something interesting to watch. And then when we're looking at everything from a regulatory perspective, I know a lot of us pharmacies say, okay, well, what does this mean to me in my pharmacy, and like what model can I exist in? So model one is if you're going to do in-house compounding. So of course with that we all know and the regulations there have increased too with USP 800, and especially most of these therapies are sterile therapies. So, you're going to have to outfit a sterile lab, or a lot of pharmacies already did, if they were going to get into sterile, they did within the past few years, 5 years or so, when they saw that this was actually ramping up. We saw a lot of sterile pharmacies enter the market. But of course, it shouldn't be done lightly because it's a huge risk. It's a huge investment. You have to really know what you're doing. Because if you don't, people could really get hurt. And we don't want any sort of outbreak because these are sterile products. So model one, if you're going to do your in-house compounding, you do have full control over the product, but you also have full responsibility. There's a lot of staffing and compliance considerations, but our Model 1 pharmacies are actually buying the API. We saw, and it's funny, not funny, but not when all the like drugs were on shortage, and semaglutide and tirzepatide, and that's even when we learned that there were like different forms of recombinant and like different ways that you could buy it. There were large pharmacies trying to buy directly from China and directly from India. And I saw too the photoshopped C of A's. It was crazy. There really were, the address of record was a boarded up building or hotel room in India or something for these. So it's things that I had never seen before this GLP craze. So our Model 1s they're probably nodding their heads. They're like, yes, we've been seeing this. We had to vet this. So of course they need a trusted partner to buy their APIs from, because they're actually buying the raw active pharmaceutical ingredient in-house and compounding it. Then you have Model 2, where this is gaining in popularity, I would say. 503A central fill, it's been around forever. We've all heard of central fill in pharmacies. It's just now there's a new use case for it. So with 503A, you have your originating pharmacy where the prescription comes to and where the patient relationship is. And then you have your central fill pharmacy or your fulfillment pharmacy. And so the central fill pharmacy might be a Model 1, right? Where they're actually compounding the product, they're making the finished product, but then they're sending that finished patient-specific product back to the originating pharmacy so that you don't have to sterile compound it in-house. You can outsource that function to your central fill partner. And then you have, whatever your state requires. Every state is very specific. If you look up, central fill in Florida, where I am, for example, it's all very explicit in what has to be documented. So there is a shared responsibility, and that part is outside of your hands. So even if you are a pharmacy that's working with a central fill partner, and we have a couple central fill partners in the Atrium24 GPO that some of our just traditional pharmacies or our non-sterile pharmacies partner with. For the central fill side, you still have that shared responsibility. Where did this API come from? what is this pharmacy's policies and procedures? Because if something happens to your patient, or if the FDA comes in and they're going to be asking you these questions because you've dispensed that product as well. It is a scalable option for many pharmacies, and of course, picking the right partner there is essential. Central fill, it's interesting because it's gained some popularity in the patient-specific compounding, especially since the tirzepatide and semaglutide went off the shortage list. And now, to your point, in all the black and white, it can't be manufactured at scale. Are some of the 503Bs still producing the GLPs? Yes, some are. And they have their own legal cases, that they've lobbied against pharma. And it's just really fascinating to watch. I always say, what a time to be alive when we see all these things happening, because it's just happening in real time for us. But 503A, a lot of pharmacies because it is truly patient specific. You still have a patient specific prescription for this specific formulation. You're outsourcing it to your central fill partner. They're filling it for that specific patient. So you're not running into the risk of manufacturing, because it is still very patient specific, and hopefully you'll have medical necessity written on the prescription. So that's model 2. We are seeing more and more of it. And then in model 3, that's really the channels that opened. It's from 503B to 503A pharmacies. And I've been working in pharmacy for a long time, and I worked on the hospital side too, in outpatient and everything. And we saw with our hospital-owned outpatient pharmacy kind of chain that I ran, 503B is typically sold into hospitals for hospital shortage products or things like that. But a few years ago now, almost, it was in 2023, the FDA kind of clarified, maybe not meaning to, but clarified on the prohibition on wholesaling document, that a function that a 503B can do is they can manufacture their finished product and sell it to a 503A pharmacy, which is, our traditional pharmacies. And then your 503A pharmacy can dispense that 503B product pursuant to a prescription. So you can't wholesale it. There's a prohibition on wholesaling of 503B product. You can't sell it to doctors' offices, or you can't sell it somewhere, but you can dispense it for a patient-specific prescription. So all of these models still have to do with the API that Matt is talking about. All these models still have to be concerned about where does the API come from. And if you're not compounding it in-house, such as in Model 2 and Model 3, if you're getting it from a central fill partner, or if you're getting it from a 503B, you still have to know where that API comes from, and then how it's compounded, and then how they're testing the finished product. So these models are all still valid, but it's just interesting to see exactly what's going on with the FDA. How is the enforcement going to come down? So those are the models that we're seeing in the industry today. And even let's say that the FDA does come. I know I was at Longevity Fest a couple months ago in December, and there were a lot of big compounders there and a lot of just word, and it was a lot of salespeople there too. So they were saying, oh, more peptides are coming, and there's going to be a lot of changes, and all these markets are going to open up. Because someone had a question, and we will get to your guys' questions and have conversation at the end, that these gyms are doing it, these med spas are doing it, but they don't have the regulatory framework, of course, that we do as pharmacies and as suppliers. Yes, and that's a good point too. In Model 3, when I referenced the prohibition on wholesaling, that's a guidance. That's a guidance document from the FDA, which is a whole nother rabbit hole. So that's a great point. Thank you. It's not final. And in industry, a lot of times they will operate on guidance, but that is unsettling for us in the pharmacy level, because we want everything to be finalized. We want to know the black and white. We don't want to color outside of the lines, because we don't do that in pharmacy. So it is challenging. to know which way is up sometimes.
Well, and Nicolette, I want to go back to when you were discussing Model 1. You talked about the fact that BPC 157 is becoming more popular because the rumor is that that's going to fall on list one again here pretty soon. And so folks anticipating that are like, well, let me get ahead of it. Let me get ahead of the game.
Right.
The rumors are spinning, people are lobbying with Maha and the group, and we get feedback from our folks that are representing our industry that are like, hey, I mean, I remember last year, maybe even around the time of Compounders on Capitol Hill, the A4PC event where we go lobby for compounding rights. There was a big buzz about how there was a Maha meeting and hey, RFK and McCary, they're all on board. We should see these all move to list one in November, and then that time frame came and went. We went back to those sources, and they were like, "Oh, no, it's going to be December now." All right, December came and went. Then okay, middle of February. We're
Yeah.
pretty sure it's going to be middle of February. So the folks who are, I mean, you guys are businessmen. You're taking risks. Of course, you're trying to get ahead of the game. You want to get your name out there. You want to establish these opportunities when you anticipate them coming. But here we are, 3, 4, 5 months later. It's not here yet. We don't know what's going to predicate that. And then, in fact, if anyone's been watching, the FDA kind of took a 180 on GLPs this last week with some of the movements that they're taking against the large telehealth firms that are marketing and doing things like that, and it went counter to everything that we assumed or anticipated coming from the FDA. So we really don't know what's going to happen until it happens. So although I appreciate those of you who follow the mantra, if there's no risk, there's no reward, or in business, you're willing to take those business risks, just understand what the repercussions are. I mean, are you in business to provide care to your patients today, or do you want to be here for the long run? And I think that's a big question that you want to ask yourself when you decide to take some of those risks.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it really was kind of unexpected, I'd say. And it was two-pronged with the FDA with their statement, because of course, they talked about marketing and making claims, and that's been going on. And we all know on the pharmacy side, especially more so than the telehealth side, I'd say, like we know with compounds, especially, that you don't make claims and that you don't use brand name drugs and you don't say it's the equivalent of. Um, but they also, the second prong of what the FDA said is that they're going to go after APIs or have more scrutiny on the APIs. So what's your take on that, Matt?
I mean, if they're legal APIs, I encourage higher scrutiny. What they need to do, and what I've discussed with some of the folks in the industry as well, is they need to enforce the laws that they already have. These are not. We don't need more regulation. We need the regulation that's currently in place to be enforced, and whether that has to do with with a limited staff at the FDA, or if that has to do with an increasing market, which it's unprecedented right now, the way that the market's increased. I don't know that the FDA could have even prepared themselves for the onslaught of interest that's starting to occur in our industry now. So even if they were staffed appropriately a couple years ago, they're behind the game now. They just cannot get out to all the facilities that are claiming to sell raw materials, that are claiming to distribute on behalf of 503A or 503B, or even resident agents for foreign manufacturers.
Yeah.
They're having a difficult time keeping up, but I think that I invite higher scrutiny of the legal APIs and to enforce the laws that are already in place.
Yeah, that's a great point. And speaking of additional regulations, before this news in the past week from the FDA, we had also heard news a little while back about the green list and about that. So what do you make of that? Have any changes come down since the green list? And it seems kind of opaque as well. So did that really move anything for us?
I think green list was to satisfy folks that were buzzing in the ears of the FDA at the time, and I think the intention was a positive, good step. Let's single out some folks that we understand have been inspected recently by the FDA, that are FDA registered, and that are known manufacturers of these GLPs. But what most folks didn't realize is that green list was just a step one in this process. Anyone who is listed on there was also required to follow up with a contact in their quality department to provide samples to the FDA of the material that they're selling to the US market. And if they didn't do that, they risked losing their status on the green list. to begin with. And so what we haven't heard from the FDA is any follow-up to those folks who are listed. They were also required to respond to the FDA and say, are we allowed to publish your name? Publish your name or publish some of the products that you're listing. And we haven't had any follow-up as to what's going on. What we have had follow-up to is that some of the firms that were listed on that green list have now either left the market or have refused FDA inspections and are now no longer eligible to be on that green list, but they haven't republished the green list to indicate that these firms are no longer eligible. So it was a positive step, but now it's just kind of creating more confusion because folks assume they're on the green list, they're good to go.
Right.
We don't know what's occurred with that follow-up. So I think that there's more work that needs to be done. And again, it's following what's already in place. So if we can continue to get some follow-up on that, if we can get some follow-through on that, I think there's going to be more transparency of these sources for these materials.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything to enforce and get the bad actors in the API space out, that's only good for patient safety. But yeah, adding more regulation to an already strained FDA system really isn't going to be enforced. So kind of going
That's
in
correct.
circles.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the bad players. I think a lot of folks see the opportunities, especially, you have your venture capitalist groups, your CE firms that are looking at this industry and saying, there's an opportunity here. And so they enter the market and they hope to hire industry professionals that might know how to navigate the rules and regulations. But honestly, there's so many nuances. Again, I've been in the industry for 25 years. I'm still learning every single day. And it takes a long time, which is why, and we certainly welcome the competition in the marketplace. The competition makes the industry stronger when you have some strong resources for that material. It gives you guys multiple options, backup resources, and maybe new approaches in design, service, how they're inspiring pharmacies to do more, to do different. But it's important that when these new players enter the market, that they're following those regulations and that, the pharmacies, again, have a responsibility to ensure that you can't just assume because they call you that they offer you an API, that they're compliant. At the end of the day, these firms are in place to earn and to appease shareholders or to appease principals in the businesses. And sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. So again, that's where the vetting of your sources, it becomes incredibly important. And the lowest price doesn't always mean the best quality, doesn't always mean the best source.
Right.
All right, moving on. Now it's time for some shameless self-promotions. Presently, PharmaSource is incredibly selective as it applies to what APIs, peptide APIs that we're going to source and carry right now. So again, I've been in the industry for a long time. I want to follow these trends. I'm risk averse, but I also understand that there are pathways to bring these products to the market. So rest assured that all of the manufacturers that we work with have been thoroughly vetted, audited, and the APIs we receive have had full compendial analysis, or what I should say is full analytical testing, because there's not compendiums to the majority of these products. But as long as the C of A meets the minimum, we're doing the testing for them. So some of the categories of which PharmaSource is selling right now is currently available. So right now, dutasteride, it's USP monographed. It's a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. It's used to treat enlarged prostates and the off-label uses like hair loss. Obviously, we have our GLP-1s like liraglutide, semaglutide, tirzepatide. I'd love to say that we were some of the pioneers on the GLP-1s back in late 2022. Back when these were really just starting to hit the market for the compounding side. I feel that we are seasoned professionals as it applies to compliance on these products. If you have questions, please ask. My quality department is so tired of hearing GLP-1, semaglutide, tirzepatide, because every day there's something new that comes out that we all have to educate ourselves on. So these are all components of approved human drug substances. They don't have monographs, but they are all components of approved human drugs. Liraglutide is the only substance that's currently off patent. So semaglutide and tirzepatide, be wary of what you're going to compound make sure the physician is determining that the commercially available product is not suitable for the patient and they have a precise reason as to why they should be taking those. That's going to protect you. They should be notating that on the prescriptions. Sermorelin acetate, that's used to stimulate the pituitary gland and release the endogenous growth hormone. This is becoming increasingly popular as well. And again, sermorelin acetate, it's a component of an approved human drug, so eligible for compounding. Now, we're also early in the process, but we're bringing in some additional peptides. These are either on list one or do have approved human uses. So GHK, that's known as the copper peptide. It's not eligible for compounding right now. You'll see it on list two, but it does have on list one, but it does have an asterisk that you cannot use that for injectable purposes. Gonadorelin acetate, that's a component of an approved human drug. Oxytocin, that's another molecule that's a component of an approved human drug. PT-141, that one's also known as bremelanotide. Again, component of an approved human drug. VIP, that's the vasoactive intestinal peptide. That appears on category one of the bulks list as well. So these are all eligible. Every item here, I added in clomiphene, NAD+. Nicolette, I know you promote a lot of therapies that include those products, so I wanted to add those. They're not considered peptides, but they are offered here. And I wanted to add, this is not a complete list of the drugs that PharmaSource offers, but these are the ones that are relevant to our discussion today. Now, right now, the jury's still out on these molecules. You'll see a disclaimer on the list one that was published in September of 2024 that these were removed from category two. So they're not on category one, they're not on category two. What do we do with these, right? They're not officially banned, they're not officially approved. So the jury's kind of still out on these right now. We get a lot of inquiries for them. AOD 9604, CJC 1295, ipamorelin acetate, thymosin alpha 1, solank acetate. I know these are currently being compounded. I know FDA uses a lot of enforcement discretion right now because where there's these gray areas, they're going to have the same responsibility to prove that what you're doing is not legal or not compliant. And when they appear on that one kind of disclaimer page of the bulk substance list, it's kind of hard to determine how they're going to enforce that from a legal standpoint. Now, the challenge with these substances is truly finding manufacturers that are willing to produce these molecules without receiving the official FDA approval to compound yet. So what we've learned is that these are all available by dietary supplement manufacturers. None of them meet the standards of CGMP drug production. And that's mostly on the coming soon, and jury's still out. Coming soon, you can find a lot of those manufacturers that are making GMP, but on the jury's still out section and on all the other ones that are on category two, the manufacturers, they're not necessarily willing to invest in GMP quality material. And because they don't currently meet that GMP drug production requirement, they shouldn't be used in compounding. And again, these manufacturers, they're reluctant to spend the tens of thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars that it would take to convert these materials to an eligible drug status. And you might be wondering, where's he getting those numbers? Where does that cost come from? And I'm going to tell you, we get this question a lot. When you're converting a drug, someone who's making it as a dietary supplement, it should be easy to convert it over to a drug substance because it's probably going to follow a very similar manufacturing method. It might start with different raw materials. You might have some other areas that you're going to control endotoxin introduction or the potential for bioburden. But where the money really comes into it is method developments and testing and validation testing. Validation is typically done in triplicate, and so when you're developing these methods and then you're testing those in triplicate, the costs just continue to increase. That means that the methods must be pressure tested to ensure that they can maintain continuity from batch to batch as well. So these are quality products. And if the Health and Human Services and FDA never move them from category one, then it's a major investment failure on behalf of these manufacturers. So for example, BP 157, let's say they wanted to start making pharmaceutical grade on the tip that it was going to be eligible for compounding last November. Right now they're sitting there going, well, we still can't sell this stuff, or we shouldn't be selling this stuff. Furthermore, the other route, which is development of an approved human drug, that's going to take several years of development and clinical trials before it had ever reached the market. And even then the molecules are going to fall under some sort of patent exclusivity. And that's going to prevent compounders to a certain extent from compounding it for many years after that. So the two methods to bring these things into compliance are not favorable to manufacturers. They're not super attractive to manufacturers right now. Now, we've researched this topic for several years. And we are yet to find a partner that is fully willing to convert these APIs to a drug status due to these risks. In fact, these manufacturers are asking us to front the money to convert these and to assume the risk. And then they're going to yield all of the benefits of them once they come to the market. I mean, are we considering this? Absolutely. I mean, would this be a great investment for us? Certainly. But then we risk the same thing. We throw a lot of money at these things to become CGMP, drug substance compliant, and then they never get converted to list one, or there's a falling out and they never come to fruition. And it's a huge risk for us, especially as a small family-owned business right now. As much as we want to defend and pioneer elements in the compounding industry, it's a huge risk that we've been reluctant to take. I'm not going to say that we won't take, but we've been reluctant to take it so far. Now, are these available from other suppliers? Absolutely. Am I confident that they do not meet the requirements? I am. So all of that said, if you're not willing to take the risk to compound these drugs, or you don't have the facility equipped to compound sterile medications, you might be able to find a central fill or a 503B outsourcing facility via Atrium24 GPO group. So, rest easy. You can search around, see who else is willing to do it. But you can also rest assured that Atrium24 vets their partners to ensure that you're going to receive the best quality formulations as well. So I'm going to pass this back to you, Nicolette.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. We work with, lots of pharmacies, and our pharmacies are working with a lot of different suppliers in the industry. On the 503B side, there have been a lot more coming to market. We talk to them, we vet them. There's a small one actually that just opened up, hasn't been inspected yet, that we're talking to. So we talk to them very early in the stages too. We actually see that they get acquired once they get bigger. So it's just really fascinating to see how these companies are growing. I always say it's not rocket science. Any of our pharmacies can do it. It takes a lot of time to vet these different partners and to watch what's going on in the channels, to do the site visits, to get all the documentation. So, and things change, like Matt said. I mean, the FDA is putting out warning letters every Wednesday. FDA is out still inspecting, and they have been inspecting 503B facilities that are making GLPs, and it's interesting to watch what 483 comes of that, what they're writing up. And so far, I haven't read anything where they address it head on. So it's like, well, you can listen to what the sales team is telling you from a company, and then you can read what the FDA is putting in black and white. But there's such a gap right now. So we're all watching it very closely. I do know at Atrium24, we do have the GPO. We have about a dozen or so GPO partners in there, and it's one of our initiatives in 2026 to grow our GPO and to bring more vetted opportunities to our pharmacies, no matter which model you're in that we talked about. So we do have 503B facilities right now that have all these products and more. We're trying to bring in some non-sterile products too, and I think that's interesting into the 503B GPO side, because you might even have, pharmacies that want to get into dermatology compounds, or even like some sort of, if they want to get into hair loss specifically, or, but it's like there's so many SKUs out there, and to start compounding it in-house, if you reach out to Matt and his team and you say, hey, I want some of this API, what's the first thing you guys are going to ask? How much do you need? How frequently you're going to be purchasing it? Because that's how this business works. And so it makes a lot of sense for a lot of pharmacies to outsource the compounding in some manner at first, and then build up the book of business at your pharmacy, talk with your prescribers, find out what they like writing for, make sure that your price points can be competitive from a business perspective for you. And then when you're ready, if you do pound in-house, and we've had even some of our sterile guys do this, once you have that business built up enough, then you can bring that product line in-house. You have that economy of scale, you can reduce the actual costs, you can maintain more of the control, and then now you like really turn on just that lever in your business. Whereas if you would have brought it all in-house and made all the SKUs at first, and you would have had to buy a ton of API and had a bunch of different formulations, and you're building it and hoping they will come. So it's more of the risk up front for our pharmacies to do that. So we have seen sterile pharmacies, compounding pharmacies, regular retail pharmacies that don't compound at all, hybrid pharmacies. We've seen all of them participate in the 503B model, in the central fill model. So more and more to come on that. But if you have questions or you want to see our partners that we have in the 503B, GPO side, we even have telemedicine partners, legal partners, central fill, like I said, and we're adding more and more to it. If you want to see our catalog, if you want to see our prices and all this, on the Q&A slide, we have our contact information. And if you fill out our contact form at Atrium, Sam from my team will reach out to you, and because it matters on your state too. So he'll talk to you specifically about what's going on in your state, who's licensed in your state, and what's available in your state. And then if you have very specific legal questions, I'm just a pharmacist, so please don't rely on me for legal advice. But we do have trusted and vetted legal partners that we can refer you to that are in our GPO as well, that they treat our pharmacies very well. They don't charge a retainer. They give a reduced hourly rate. That way you can just get your very specific questions answered. So we try to make it as streamlined as possible in this complex world that we're working in.
Yeah, Nicolette, I also wanted to kind of throw out there, A4PC is a good resource for best practice. They're publishing a lot of best practice documents right now so that you know how to navigate through your pharmacy for areas that you might not be as versed in. They obviously do not provide legal advice, but there's a significant number of articles to help interpret what the law is stating. What does the FDA mean by this, et cetera? So if you haven't visited or if you're unfamiliar with the Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding, go check out a4pc.org, and they can also give you some of that advice as well. I also wanted to touch on a very good point you made with the warning letters. You're not necessarily seeing the FDA taking the peptide compounding head on. And the FDA does make it kind of difficult because you'll see some redactions in those FDA warning letters. And so you don't know what drug substance they might be referring to in some of those cases. So you really have to refer or defer to the language that they're using. If they're talking about adulterated drugs or items along some of those buzzwords to identify, hey, what are these? How could they be adulterated? Adulterated would mean that they're not what they're supposed to be, or they're not eligible for use. So wanted to touch on that because that was a very good point, Nicolette. All right, so now, and we only have a few more slides, folks. I know we're at the top of the hour here, and we're approaching about the last few that we have. So hopefully you're learning a lot, but continue to hang in there. So if you sat through this presentation or asking yourself, what can we do about this? Should we do this? Does this fit your pharmacy practice? You can start by asking, are your physicians or patients inquiring about this medication right now? Does your pharmacy fill other lifestyle drugs like hormone replacement therapy or their anti-aging medicines? So does it fit into your current business model? So perhaps you have a well of untapped revenue that's out there, and you should really consider speaking to some of your physicians about this. But if you are planning to prepare sterile drugs, you must be set up to follow USP 797 guidance. That's for sterile compounding, and have all the equipment in place to compound these formulas. Otherwise, you could be in for a large investment. I'm not going to say that investment won't pay off. I know a lot of folks left sterile, which left a vacuum for, in some cases, sterile pharmacies to crop up. But again, it's a big investment. And if you said yes to any of the previous questions, how well do you understand the sourcing of these ingredients? Hopefully this presentation has given you a little bit more insight into that. You must ensure that you're using safe suppliers who follow all of the regulations. Please do not cut corners. You don't want to be the front page news for the wrong reasons. I see a lot of promotions. I get Google alerts. A lot of you guys do a great job with PR and getting out there and advertising your business. Please keep doing that. What I don't want to see, and what I do occasionally see, I'll get a Google alert for somebody who's doing things incorrectly. That the news agencies tend to filter on bad news, and if you're not paying for that advertisement, you're front page for a reason that you don't want to be. And of course, Are you prepared for the success and responsibility if this takes your pharmacy to the next level? There's a lot of staffing requirements and staffing needs that occur, and I can speak on that here at our growing business. We've grown significantly. Even though I have a number of years in the industry, this is a newer business for us to be running, and the success that we've seen, and any of you who run a pharmacy can sympathize. Hire someone who runs HR. It makes your job a lot easier. Makes you sleep a little easier. They get to vet a lot of things, but hiring the staff to make sure you can keep up with this, ensuring that your facility remains up to speed, up to regs, and that you have the space to occupy the growth as well. So all of those things considered, are you ready for this success that's going to be coming? And again, I'm going to go ahead and pass this along to Nicolette. I think at that, my time is done with you folks. So again, Nicolette, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this topic. I'm here for questions. I'll be here for the Q&A, but I'll turn this over to you for the remainder of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know we had some questions that came in, and I just want to remind you guys, Atrium X is coming up very soon, actually 3 weeks from today. We will be in Orlando. Matt, your team will be there. My team will be there. And we have all kinds of pharmacies, sterile pharmacies, regular retail pharmacies, regular straight compound pharmacies, hybrid pharmacies. We have 503Bs who are going to be there, API suppliers, people from all over the compounding spectrum, and from the retail spectrum as well. And what I love most is Atrium X is attendee led and driven. So everybody's going to vote on what they want the breakout topics to be about. We have 4 blocks of breakout topics where we do 2 at a time. And so last year we had some really good topics, and it's just so awesome to be able to sit in the room with like-minded people who either are doing the same things that you want to do in your business, or they want to do them, or if you want to learn from folks, or if you want to share what went well for you, what you would have done differently next time, what your challenges are now. So we're really excited. This is year 2. This is only the second year we're ever doing Atrium X. We did it for the first time with this completely new format last year, and it was really cool. It was amazing just to bring, because you don't want to hear, one speaker the whole time from the stage, or you go to a lot of these shows, you start to hear the same speakers over and over again. And I know a lot of our attention spans, I know mine has become a lot shorter because we're all so busy and we all just want to get the information as quickly as possible. So it's no CEs. Folks come, they talk about what is happening in their business right now. And I love it because we really get to hear from folks who aren't usually on stage and aren't usually, giving webinars or commenting on the social media groups. You get to really hear from these folks that are nose down in their business and who are really making moves. So we do still have attendee tickets available. So that's the QR code there. But if you go to atrium24.io, you can register for the conference as well. So we hope to see some of you guys there. I know I see on the list we have quite a few of our registrants I can see are on this webinar too. So see you guys in a few weeks. But I just had to do an Atrium X plug. I couldn't get through a webinar without it. And so here's our contact information. We have my team at Atrium24 on the left. Any questions, always email into us, hello@atrium24.io. If we don't know the answers, or we'll definitely connect you with the folks who do. You have Matt's contact information at PharmaSource Direct there in the middle. Like I said, if you want to talk about your state, your pharmacy, 503Bs, central fills, whatever opportunities you have, pricing catalogs, any kind of questions, if you fill out our contact form with that QR code or atrium24.io/contact, Sam can get with you and show you all the specifics on what the opportunities are in your state. But we can open it up for questions. We did have one come in. And this is a great point, Devin, because this is the frustration, right? So Devin says, what I do not get is that local gym and med spas are dispensing the likes of the retatrutide and other peptides as research products. Yet it seems we would be taken to the cleaners if we did. They're dispensing, yet we are the pharmacies. And it is so frustrating because patients don't see that, oh, things are more expensive through the proper channels. I just want to buy it cheap. I want to buy it on TikTok. I want to buy it from social media, research grade, well, all my friends are taking it. And it's wild, just the gray market and the risk that these patients are willing to put themselves through to inject these untested things into their bodies. So what is, is there a response? In some prescribers, they're only looking at price. Telemed, if they're looking at for your pharmacy for fulfillment, they're only looking at price. It's disheartening.
Yeah, and this is a topic that I was just discussing earlier today, is that if they don't, I mean, because gyms and med spas, they don't technically fall under FDA jurisdiction. The
Right.
folks who fall under FDA jurisdiction would be 503As, 503Bs, wholesalers like ourselves, manufacturers, etc. So these gyms, these med spas, they're not registered with the FDA. Question is, can the FDA not enforce regulations to folks that do not fall under their jurisdiction? And I would say yes. There's an example in California, I think it was early last year. There was a facility that was posing as a 503B. So they were mass manufacturing. And when I saw the warning letter come through, I keep myself up. There's like 92 registered 503Bs right now. I usually recognize if there's a new name out there. I didn't recognize this name, so I went searching. 503B, no. State Board of California Board of Pharmacy, you can verify licenses there. They're not registered there, but they were mass producing these things, and FDA got wind of it, went in and shut them down. They threw an injunction on that organization, that facility. I don't know what to call them,
Yeah.
and shut them down from production. So again, that's one example, and that's literally the one example that I have where the FDA acted against a firm that should not have been doing what they're doing. So I can appreciate the frustration from Devin, because he does this thing, and like you said, they're going to be taken to the cleaners if they do this. But then these gyms and med spas are not being held accountable for doing the same thing. And again, I think it boils down to staffing issues, budget issues, FDA's capability of broad enforcement. I think that's when it could also boil down to the board, to the local board of pharmacies. What are they doing to help protect patients, and can they get involved to a certain level? I don't have the answers to those questions, but I certainly feel that should be done.
Yeah, and it seems that state boards are starting to crack down, but almost in the wrong ways. They're almost, putting this language out in some instances where it's prohibitive to actual compounding pharmacies. It's like the language just doesn't make sense. You're trying to shut down these like gas station drug sources, but it's going to impact compounders. And so I know we're dealing with that in Florida. I know you're dealing with that in Colorado. So there's a lot going on the advocacy side. We had a question come in too. What do you think about the companies that sell peptides as OTC? And can they sell that at the pharmacy? So I assume you mean like the peptide, like capsules and just like different OTC kind of like supplement types of peptides.
I mean, I would assume that this kind of falls in the same area as like the CBD,
Yeah.
because I know for the longest time, especially when CBD started becoming popular, and then pharmacies were allowed to sell it, and then all of a sudden pharmacies weren't allowed to sell it because the
Yeah.
DEA got involved, and there was the derivative elements of what was THC present or not.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, as it applies to the OTC abilities of pharmacies, I think that's going to really boil down to your individual state board of pharmacy allowances and requirements, and what you're able to distribute, because you're not dispensing OTC products, but what you're also able to distribute at the cash register. Or almost every single pharmacy out there has their supplement lines that they've white labeled through these mass manufacturing firms. And it really does differ from state to state. Nicolette, you might even have a better take, and I know where you're at, is going to be different than where anybody else is at. So
Yeah.
probably important to put an asterisk on here. It's like this, but not sure where else it's at. So do your due diligence.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely watch what your state board is saying, watch what's being enforced, watch what is kind of happening in your state board, because there's a lot happening right now. And Florida is usually pretty, usually with our board of pharmacy, you can't really get much of an answer. It's like Florida kind of hangs back, and um it's usually not one of the boards that's, California is very direct. and very, very aggressive. Florida's, we joke, Florida man, anything goes kind of thing, just in jest. But now Florida's actually coming out with some things. I was on the phone with our representative here, our state representative in my area, because we have some things that are going before the board, and it's like it's all changing. So definitely watch what your board is saying. It's a moving target. If you have more questions, definitely email Matt and his team, email myself and my team. But we're just scratching the surface on this topic, and it's ever changing. So I'm excited to see what topics are going to arise at Atrium X in a few weeks. That's non-CE. We're not recording it. It's there's very specific and strict rules on the integrity of the group and the conversation, so that people are allowed to be vulnerable and they are allowed to share in the room what's going on in their business, what they're struggling with. Speaking of HR, we even had that as a topic last year. They talked about like incentives and employee evaluations and reviews and that kind of thing, because that's something that's top of mind for all of us business owners. So you never know what the topic's going to be this year, but I imagine they'll revolve somewhere around peptides and things like that, at least in a couple of them. And we also have a legal panel at the conference at Atrium X, and we have a panel on AI as well, because those are really hot topics and we have some experts there. So hope to see you guys there. Definitely reach out if you have any questions. Matt, thank you so much for just giving us all your wisdom and information on this topic that's very near and dear to you and your daily operations. And again, thank you for your advocacy and for everything that you're doing for our profession, because we need everything that we can get on the good guys front.
Yes, Nicolette, absolutely. It was a pleasure to speak with you this evening and speak with your folks. And thank you to Atrium again for the stage. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you guys so much. Thanks for your time and attention. Have a good night.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.